And looking ahead, what the key priority and goals you aim to achieve during your tenure of Chief of Police in Seattle?
Well, I think first and foremost, I would love to see making sure that we continue to focus on reduction of crime. That is obviously one of our number one charters is just people feeling safe and having public safety at the forefront of it. And so
Chief Adrian Diaz of Seattle, welcome to the show. Please, could you please provide a brief introduction about yourself for our viewers, outline and the role of the responsibility of the Chief of Police in Seattle?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm Adrian Diaz. I am the Chief of Police. I have been on 27 years with the Seattle Police Department. I have worked in a variety of units, and in the last 3.5 years, I took over in the midst of a racial reckoning in 2020, and I have led our department to this point in that 3.5 years, and we're continuing to push our department to new heights.
And can you share with us whether there has been increase or decrease in the crimes rate in Seattle, and the factor that may be contributing this trend?
Yeah, so really what I like to focus on is violent crime. So we've actually seen a violent crime reduction last year compared to the year before. In 2022, it was probably one of our highest years of violent crime. But in 2023, we actually saw a 6% reduction. Reduction in shootings and shots fired. The one thing that did see an increase was actually homicides. And a part of that is because the amount of our shell casings or amount of rounds that were fired during that year. But we actually are trending overall, in overall crime, we're actually trending down. Last year we were down 10%. This year we're down another 10%. The problem that I have in some of our property crime is that we know that not everyone is reporting out on some of the property crime. When it comes to businesses that have been impacted by burglaries or even property damage, such as windows broken, they're not always reporting that crime. And we know that that's been consistent over years, but I know that over the last couple of years, I'm hearing more and more anecdotally from a lot of the businesses and residents. And so it's sometimes that we don't always know what the accuracy is when it comes to property crime.
And to follow up, there's a lot of camera in the city, and most of the incident, there's camera capture on that. Why the police don't use that information and to capture the criminals?
Yeah, so we actually do use cameras. We actually use photos. A lot of that is some. I'm sorry. A lot of the cameras sometimes have varying types of focus, which is sometimes they can be grainy and not as accurate for us to determine who exactly did that. It might give us a description. Sometimes it gives us some reference to sometimes height because it's next to, say, a building, and we can understand like potentially how tall somebody might be, their clothing, and sometimes their facial structures. Some cameras are much better than others, so the investment is a lot different. And so really, we do use that. It just really depends on the actual, we work with our prosecutor's office to determine how accurate it is. The other thing that in cameras, and that's really important to note, is that we don't have AI, what they call AI technology. So we can't run it through a database and say, okay, this person is actually reflective of John Smith. So a lot of that is that when we get an image, sometimes it's actually putting it out to the community to say, can you identify this person? Because we don't have those extra tools at our disposal.
And the shooting, unfortunately, have been a recurring issue in the community. What proactive measure in the Seattle Police Department is taken to address this to prevent the incident?
Yeah, so...
And usually it happens some area, most of the shooting.
Yeah, so we have had, about 40% of our shots fired actually occur within the South End, in what we refer to as the South Precinct. And if you look at certain areas of the city, you look up on Aurora around, 85th and Aurora and North, You look at the Central District, you look at the South End and downtown, those are predominant areas for gun violence. And that doesn't mean it doesn't happen in other areas. We have had an unfortunate shooting in the West Seattle area, which affected one of our East African communities members. And so it really is predominantly a lot of the shootings are in certain areas. And then what we do is we work with community partners. We try to make sure that those community partners have the information about shootings so they can do a lot of prevention and intervention. We do what we refer to it as CAPE. This is our initiative when it comes to violent crime. It's working with community. Then we took a deep look into analytics. So we look at like hotspots. What are those trends of those hotspots? Who might be involved in those shootings and shots fired? So we take a deep analysis of it. Sometimes it's vehicles. Sometimes we're able to get information from informants. And then what we also do is we also look at laws. So this is the prevention side. So we actually look at safe storage. So how are guns coming into our community? Are they being stolen? Are they being purchased from a person and then that person is selling them to community? And so we take a deep look into the actual legislative part. And then we also have two other components of our CAPE model, and that is our environment. So it's about increasing lighting, cutting back brush, really try to make it an environment that is welcoming and that people want to utilize that space. And then the other part is enforcement. And that's making sure that we go out, we target a certain area, we target people that are more prone to this violence. And we don't want to just do random patrolling. We really want to be targeted to those that we know and have knowledge that are potential shooters. And so last year alone, we recovered over 1,532 guns, which is the most guns we've ever recovered since we've actually been tracking it. And that is actually more guns with 375 less officers that we actually have patrolling our streets. And so that right there is a telling effect that just how much guns are actually in our community, but also that our officers are working really, really hard to making sure that this city is safe.
Okay, and we put the questions about if the community wanted to ask you about it, and they send us some of the questions. They scared about it report because they see that people they picked it up, then it's still on the street again, and they don't want to take the risk about reporting. Yeah.
You know that is actually an issue that we hear very routinely, and right now we're working with the city attorney's office and what we call a high utilizer initiative. So it's identifying people that have a high propensity for a lot of the criminal activity, that are routinely being contacted for criminal activity. But we have a really challenging issue in this city. We're dealing with a high level of mental health issues, and we're dealing with a high level of homelessness issues. And some of those issues, which I prefer for us not to be policing those issues. However, when it actually becomes criminal, we need to be actively involved and have the tools to be able to address some of the issues that are going on. I routinely hear from businesses where somebody that is experiencing mental health is walking by a business and just shatters their window. And, it costs so much to replace, so it has a huge impact to them. It also has a huge impact to feeling safe in that environment. But they're also, so if an officer goes and makes contact, if it's a misdemeanor crime, sometimes we don't have those tools at our disposal to, say, book them into jail. And so depending on what those booking standards are. And so those are some of the challenges that we're facing. We're wanting to we work actually really close with our prosecutor's office and our city attorney's office to ensure that there's accountability for people that are doing crime. But there are some limitations within our criminal justice system that we're all working through.
Yeah. Question, many community members have expressed feeling less safe in certain area. How is the police department working to improve the sense of the safety and security of the resident?
Yeah, so every day our officers are patrolling areas. We're actually doing more of what we focus on is directed patrol. So we're hitting areas that have high propensity for potential crime or criminal activity. But we also know that because we are short-staffed, we're really trying to make sure that we're really targeting violent crime. That's the area, and those areas are where shootings are occurring. So we know, just from a location that we're at right now, we know that the Safeway just down the block has been impacted by gun violence. We know that schools that are during their day, sometimes there's shots fired and they're going through lockdown, and those kids are experiencing trauma. So we're trying to make sure that we put our resources in those areas so kids and the community feel safe. Because this last year we are seeing a reduction in overall violent crime, that is a good trend that I hope people are starting to feel like maybe things are turning the corner. But again, we got to make sure that we keep our foot on the pedal and that we're still addressing a lot of the crime, and that we're holding some of these violent offenders that are literally harming our community, that are preying on our community, that we hold them accountable. We have to make sure that our court systems are keeping them held, and that our prosecutors are prosecuting. And I know everybody's working really, really hard, but we're dealing with a lot of challenges because we just don't have as many resources.
Okay, and can you discuss about your relationship with the mayor? Do you cooperate with the concern of the community?
Yeah, so the mayor is my boss, and we work very closely together. He's always routinely hearing from community about some of the challenges. He's talking to me about our resources, what we're thinking, and then also putting initiatives that we're also saying, hey, this could help us address it. Such as when he first came into office, he helped he created the Unified Care Team to deal with people that are experiencing homelessness and making sure that there's a compassionate approach, and that helped actually reduce some of the violence that was occurring within our homeless community. The other piece that we were experiencing is that we really didn't have a fix when it came to the amount of fentanyl that was hitting our community and the amount of people using fentanyl. And mayor called even all the city elected officials and the community members, put together an initiative and actually created a path for legislation. And we're now starting to do a compassionate approach to the people that are using drugs, where if they're creating harm in our community, that we're still offering them services. But if they're not taking those services, that there potentially is a path for addressing that criminal activity. And so it really is a balanced approach that we work with when we're working with our mayor's office. And it's really to have such a great partnership to address the issues that impact you and the community.
Okay, and what program does the police department have in place to promote the community engagement and build trust between law enforcement and the resident, including the youth?
This has been youth have been such a huge part of my career, and the resources that I once had coming up through the department are gone. During 2020, or actually 5 years ago, our department was about 1,425 officers. And over that 5-year period, because there was a push for defunding the police department, we lost 725 officers. That was half the department. And so a lot of those programs that we were running we're still running them, but we're much limited in our ability to be really effective throughout all of our communities. We actually are running a chess program that's actually right down the street. We're routinely running a program called our Police Activities League, where we do a lot of sporting events for kids and youth in the community. We have an immigrant and refugee liaison that is in our department. We have advisory councils that we're listening to the community members throughout, like 11 different advisory councils. We actually have one specifically for the East African community. So a lot of those activities are still happening, they're still occurring, but they're not as robust as we once had them. And we're working as we onboard new personnel, as we onboard them, making sure that they're actively engaged. One of the things that we're doing with our new recruits that we never had done before, and no police department in the country is doing this, is we're actually bringing our recruits 6 weeks prior to their police academy, and we're infusing them in community. We're infusing them in social emotional learning and brain development. And so that way, when they're actually in the community, they're being much more empathetic and compassionate to the community's needs when they're actually on a call for service. But they're actually listening and hearing from the community. And this is things that they've never, we hadn't done before. But police departments are now coming to this program. It's called SPD Before the Badge. And it's saying they want more information because they want to implement it in their area. And we end up doing this. This was kind of one of my thoughts in May of 2022 to actually implement. And I have a team that is working on implementation.
So the elected official, do you get in the resources you need to continue to improve the police?
Yeah, the mayor has been fantastic to work with and helping us get the resources that we need. We have a new city council that has come on board January. I've actually been meeting with them just this last week. I think I met with 4 different city council members. So having that relationship is really crucial to making sure that the department has the tools and equipment, and also that our officers feel valued and respected and going out and doing the job that they're needing to do.
And how you talked about earlier, but just I want to ask this question. How does the Seattle Police Department approach the issue related to mental health and homelessness in the community? Yeah,
so we have experienced mental health issues in this city. We had about 11,000 calls for service every single year, and last year was no different. We were just a little under that last year, but that's still pretty consistent. And we know that out of those 10 to 11,000 calls for service, about a third of those calls are where people need to be what they call involuntary treated. That means that they need a police officer to say, you're unable, you're a grave danger to yourself or others in the community, and that we have to hold you at a hospital because you need those extra services. But what we've also been, we actually have 5 mental health workers that are actually employed by the police department that work closely with our detectives to help de-escalation, but also helping get people the services that are needed. Then we also, as a department is growing, we've actually been creating what they refer to as a third department called CARE. And that CARE department is actually working on mental health issues. So they have 6 different workers that are going out and responding out to reduce the load of police calls that really, honestly, their skill set is better suited. And so as that expands out, you'll see not just a police officer out in the community, but you'll actually see a care worker, or you might end up seeing the fire department also take on calls for service that typically once were police officers' calls.
Do you have any message for the youth that you want to tell about?
With the youth, this is every day is what your legacy that you're leaving. And you want to leave the most positive legacy in your life. You have this opportunity to create it. And the way I always think about it is one mentor told me, he goes, you're going to look back, what do you want people to remember you for? Do you want people to remember you for, how you help people, how you, served people, and what you did in your life and what made value to people. And also, they always said, don't disrespect the family and don't harm the family. And those are all things that, put a big burden on us, but we have to do. But I would actually say, when I think about youth, and I have 3 kids myself, what I ask of my kids is reach your potential. Go out and really, what your value is. We see you. We want to make sure that you reach that potential and that value, that you can go out and do anything you want in our community to make it positive and make it better. And make sure you leave the best legacy that you can leave.
And looking ahead, what the key priority and goals you aim to achieve during your tenure of Chief of Police in Seattle?
Well, I think first and foremost, I would love to see making sure that we continue to focus on reduction of crime. That is obviously one of our number 1 charters is just people feeling safe and having public safety at the forefront of it. And so that is my goal. My goal is also to make sure that the department isn't a department that creates harm for the community. We actually have seen our use of force being reduced when it comes to level 2 and level 3 use of forces, which means that when we're actually finding ourselves to doing much better de-escalation than we've ever done. We've only had one officer involved shooting in like 22 months. And the whole George Floyd issue was about like killing of black men, and you know, one of the things that we're really doing is taking a different approach and using different methods to actually help have better outcomes. And you know, it's listening to community, it's de-escalating, it's using tools to help save people's lives in the midst of crisis. And so, you know, I was just in a community that had 19 in 1 year, and we've had 1 in 22 months. So I think, you know, for me, it's about continuing to strive for excellence and making sure that we're still rooted in just being able to help people. And so, yeah, that's what I really hope during my tenure that we continue to strive for. And I think we're seeing those incremental steps of progress, but we still also have a long way to go. And it's also rebuilding the department up. And we, you know, I would also say to the youth that we are hiring, and we would love to have, you know, our community, that people go out and serve our community, come from the community. So please think about our department when you're now saying, hey, I'm getting older, what is my job opportunities? The Seattle Police Department is hiring.
Great. And finally, what message you want to send to the community?
You know, we really want to work with the community. We want to make sure that we're, you know, this is a collaboration. This isn't just the police department, you know, making the community safe. It's really all of us working to make this community safe. We want to hire people from the community because we also want to make sure that, you know, people are responsive. They know the languages and they have the ability to talk and communicate and understand the culture. And so we want to make sure that we're inclusive, that we're, you know, a part of that community, that is part of belonging. And so I would say it's important for us to, you know, create those dialogues, create those opportunities, but also let's figure out how to work together and making sure that our communities are safe.
And thank you very much. Thanks for coming today.